Hey folks, how's it going? RedMaster here, and welcome back to another patch review video where we've got probably the biggest set of changes to happen to the early access Cards and Castles 2 build since launch, and there is quite a lot of stuff to talk about. Now, full disclaimer for this, I won't be involving every change that happened on this list. Some of them I don't find as impactful as probably some others, and there are some greater overall changes that I think deserve more of the attention, at least for this specific video. So we're going to be hitting those first and probably giving them the most time, I want to imagine, but we'll see how things progress. But yeah, certainly a very, very big patch. Before we get into it, let me know what you guys think of the patch down below in the comments. I want to kind of hear your thoughts maybe a little earlier than I would say this, but hey, it's a big change. For those of you who are playing right now have also sort of told me, and I feel this as well, but the game is pretty different from what it used to be just under a week ago because of how large these changes are. So many things moving in terms of spell speeds, level reworks, creating this new dynamic for units across the board. I want to give a real good explanation, or at least try to break that down as best as I can for you guys here. But yeah, let me know what you think down below ahead of time, just so that way we can get some thoughts going in the comments. But let's go ahead and actually start and get this patch video underway. So the first change I want to talk about is to the units here, or just actually cards with previously like health and level in general. The idea that they are now sort of being shown off as just level 3 with their respective class is a bit of a major change in my opinion, certainly from where we saw previously, in which you had the level, you had the class, but you also had a general stat line on the card to give an approximation of what the unit's power was in sort of this deck building process. Now, I mean, the stats aren't gone completely. If you click on a tooltip for a unit, the details of attack and health are listed for you. But it certainly takes away from what we saw previously, where it was just on the card, you could see it and compare easily to other cards. And some people, of course, aren't really too fond of this, I think because most were still using the numbers as a transition from, you know, previously focusing on numbers on the cards and things like that, into the health bar system, in which they're bigger numbers, but they're calculated behind the scenes. That way you can rely more on the bar than you have to do actual calculations for. And I think that's just what they're trying to really convey here, is that the levels are more important than having to worry about exact numberings and exact math, because overall they just don't want you to be doing all that math behind the scenes. There's so many different factors, obviously, the class bonuses, fatigue, the unit's level. All of these are sort of tying into combat, and to do that math all in your head obviously is a bit nasty. Now, I know people like to do math, it makes them feel more comfortable, and that's fine, but I think that's why they're in the tooltip. They're there for you to do that exact math. If for a, I guess, more casual player, they're trying to convey that the levels are important. The cockatrice has stats equal to a level 3 beast, which could be somewhere around like what we're seeing here, 12 attack or 12 to 17 attack, the range for fatigue and whatnot. And then you've got the health at 26. So obviously maybe we can compare that to, say, the swords here, where you see, okay, less attack here, a bit less health, but of course swords has a different class bonus, so maybe that's being factored in here. It's kind of a way to just show, I think, that you don't have to focus on the numbers. That's really what I think this specific change is trying to convey. And again, that's going to upset a few people, but overall, I do think that it makes the cards look a bit cleaner. Sure, I understand why people don't like the numbers disappearing, and I'm sort of also advocating for that as well. But to someone who's also not, been using the number system for their exact calculations in game, it doesn't really bother me that the numbers are no longer there, because overall I've been adapting to the health bar system more and more, trusting it, knowing when the right time to strike is on some cards, whether it's, I'm going to lose a unit, whether I'm going to survive with a unit and keep it for more interactions. those are things that you are going to learn as long as you're, playing some games and getting that experience. But I can definitely see how it's sort of going to be a turn-off factor for people not being able to directly see the numbers. I want to kind of give this a shot, though, see where it pans out. But I think that is the major change of this patch that I wanted to address first and foremost, is that the units and, anything with a level and stat line has been sort of revamped into this new format where it's just telling you, hey, level, class, if you want the details, again, over in that tooltip where you could see just about where things are here. And same with the racking too. Actually, when you look at it, 12 to 17 attack here and a 26 points of health, that's pretty much the same thing as the cockatrice, which you saw was also a level 3 beast. So it's doing a good job in kind of conveying that the stat lines are pretty equal across the board for certain cards here. Level 3B seem to have the same stat lines here. If we look at maybe Magic Eater, we see, all right, 11 to 15. Is there any other level of 3 assassins? As I'm doing this on the fly, I don't really know. Actually, why don't I just type it in rather than saving the time here? Oh, it is the only level 3 assassin. God damn. Okay, so let's look at, I guess, Slayer and Kunoichi. So 13 to 18, 33 health. 12 to 16, 30 health. Because again, because we're also factoring an ability here. So maybe that is taking a bit of a toll, maybe? But it said it wasn't before. So I think the system does need to maybe be explored a little bit more, but overall I think it's an attempt at further simplification, which, you're free to disagree or agree with depending on where you are currently with bars in the card game. But overall, like I said, this is pretty much the biggest change I wanted to cover here. Let's go ahead and talk about a different game changer, though, that needs to be addressed. Right, and that second change is pretty much a lot of spells moving into the burst category. Now, if you've been playing the game for a while, you'll know how powerful burst spells can be. They can be played at any time and sort of have no reaction, or they don't allow reactions from your opponent to respond. Unlike the incantations where you were able to, say, place an incant rune down, your opponent could maybe fortify to protect, to get some kind of counterplay. This is no longer the case. While there are still incantations in the game, a lot of these cards now are being moved over to burst. Things like Blaze, Mugging, which we're looking at right now. What else? I know there's a couple. Face of Death, that was another one that is now considered a burst spell. I think one more. Cemetery, again, another one. Document Forgery. A lot of things being moved into the burst category, I think, open up for a lot of cool new directions for different decks. Document Forgery, it's been in particular, I think we're going to see a bit more play from that because you can instantly play the Forgery in the summon phase, kind of before the combat happens, and your opponent may be able to snipe off a couple of your units here. I think that's pretty big, but I think mainly what this is going to do is allow more spells to see this instant play and be a bit more impactful in games, rather than kind of being slow incantations that might be dead in your hand if you're not already established on the board. I mean, that's certainly what we saw with a couple of incantations. Things like Forgery, Cemetery, they weren't exactly great when you weren't in a great spot on the position or on the board already. Mugging, Blaze, cool damage spells, but again, needed you to be in combat phase, and by then, if your opponent had initiative, the situation could have drastically changed outside of your favor from using that. So, I'm enjoying the fact that a lot of things now are burst, especially more ninja spells. Dissipate, of course, is finally free now, which fantastic changes on this card. No mana restriction and burst. Popping opponent units back to hand, especially those big boys, can be very, very fun to do now. Curse, you are already a burst spell. Get out of my way. Overall, it's a great thing to see a lot of new spells being put into the burst category. I think this creates a lot more opportunity, like I mentioned, for a variety of decks, but also just individual cards as well. Being able to get better interactions just by being able to be used in more optimal times now, more effective times, if you will, in the summon phase, whoever's initiative it is. These different factors that are in the game now being able to, I guess, go towards these spells' favor, which is really cool to see, but maybe I'm kind of complicating it at that point here. The point is, expect to see a lot more spells in people's decks, a lot more burst shenanigans, because now with a lot of things being freed here or put into burst, as I like to call it, it's gonna be great. I mean, we're already seeing experiments now. I've been using mugging a lot more now that it's a burst spell, damage, treasure ramp that can happen in the summon phase to prevent, you know, initiative units from attacking. Very, very good there. Man the cannons, that's going to be huge. I could already feel it. Document forgery, like I said. Cemetery for some shenanigans with resurrection, which we'll talk about resurrection later. Overall, I think this is just another one of those major gameplay changes that are going to really shake things up. But I just kind of wanted you all to be aware of that, as now so many new cards are in this burst potential. So yeah, let's go ahead though and talk about some individual cards now that have been changed, because I think those are going to be what's more important to you guys moving forward. Alright, and the first change we're going to talk about is this little sucker. Now, this guy kind of pisses me off, in which this, I think, was a approach to steel decks. Now, if you don't already know, steel has kind of been changed up a little bit in their lineup, as you can see. Oh, well, let's go ahead and put it to pirates so we can really get an idea. Okay, so we're looking at the current steel lineup, right? Con Artists and Den of Thieves are the centerpieces. These guys pretty much remain the same. What's changed is now the Thievery, the spell card that was previously the 2 gold steel 2, and the Thief, who was previously a ramp card. Him and the new Elvish Bandit, renamed to Treasure Bandit, have been sort of swapping, or have swapped roles, in that the Thief is now the steel support and the Bandit is now the treasure support. And this little guy is just annoying because he's a turn 1, literally +1 for your hand, or not +1. He kind of just balances out the hand anyway. Like, basically, you throw him out turn 1, he picks up a card for free. It's like Lumberjack draw in this game, except the draw is not coming from your deck. You're yoinking it from your opponent, which we've all seen, if you've been playing, that, you know, steel can take some pretty important cards and combo pieces from your opponent, depending on what decks they're running. So to see that happen in a turn 1 play is just a little frustrating to me personally. And I mean, obviously, I think the steel archetype has kind of taken a bit of a hit here, so I can't really complain too much. I mean, Thievery, people have said, feels very difficult to use. It's a 5 gold, it's an incantation, it's damage, but, you know, they can easily also block it in a way. So it's hard to get a steel too, except from the Con Artist. But, like, man, this guy is just going to be really annoying for a lot of pirate decks. And this is probably going to be a global pirate include for the next, you know, however long we have until Thief changes. Because he's just so obnoxious, and I don't see any downside to playing him. Unless you really have a tight list and don't need the extra card. Which, I mean, I think all decks want in some capacity. So, to see him not, you know, a pirate deck could be a little weird, because I mean, it'd be basically like passing up Lumberjack draw, as we said earlier, except the draw is coming from your opponent's deck, which is a real big middle finger turn 1. So yeah, Thief, probably a big change here, one that I'm sort of frustrated about, because we've already seen where he can go, ninja decks especially. I mean, I will admit, I have a dirty combo where I have running Panda and Thief in the same deck. I Panda away the Thief, and I can replay the Thief same turn potentially. It's gross. It certainly is gross, and we'll have to see how long this guy sticks around for, because I assume he shouldn't be here for too long. Next up on our list is Smithy. Now, of course, this was a kind of warrior, guardian buff, I believe, also knight as well. He kind of was just a generic unit that could give a level boost to warriors, guardians, and knights. However, now I think his ability is much more stronger than that. Sort of the same level premises, but now adds a copy of Dwarven Weapons to your hand. Of course, the Dwarven Weapons being the increase a unit's level by 2 burst spell for 1 gold, which is much more significant than I think just 1 level would have been. But yeah, this guy also a bit more of a generic tool in my opinion, one that if you have the room for it, you know, it wouldn't hurt to throw it in. It's a turn 2 body. It's an early game play to just get a unit out to defend yourself. But also carrying that global, that stat boost. I shouldn't call it a global. It's a stat booster is what it is. But holding this now for, you know, however long you can and using it at the right time can be pretty important. A lot of cards are already now bordering on being pretty powerful based on their level. So if we increase that now, it just means that they're going to hit harder that they're intended to do and cause some potentially serious damage. So yeah, be careful for this one. I think Smitty is going to appear in a lot of places. Same actually with Fat Bard, now that I'm talking about it here. Because sort of similar on the lines of Smitty, it's now just a level boost, a global level booster for 3 random friendly units. This I think is sort of the supposed downside, the fact that it's only 3 random units one time, so you can't just like pump up a single unit by 3 levels, which is good. But when you consider that, you know, by the point in the matchup where Fat Bard is coming out, you may have 3 units already, and it's very easy to control where it's lining up. I see this as a pretty big change and a pretty effective one for Fat Bard at that. No longer just the generic beast support here. He's a generic support for everything. So, again, keep on the lookout for something like Fat Bard appearing in decks, because, I mean, if people have the room, they might experiment and start throwing him in there. Maybe there's going to be a debate between Smithy and Fat Bard, but both, of course, delivering some scary potential to the game. So, yeah, very curious to see where those go. But let's go ahead and jump to our next change. Alright, next up is this little punk. We're taking the small guys and really harping on them today, but Magic Eater receiving a lot of help from this recent patch. Yeah, so basically, Eater was kind of fine as a card. I know he was doing a couple of Absorb aggro stuff not too long ago, but now I think he's gotten pretty dangerous. Gains 12 attack from the first time it absorbs damage, and it's already at a, 11 to 15 attack. So you're basically looking at a 3-1, because you get the mana, assassin that could hit for 23 to 27. It's pretty gross, especially with how early it's coming out. I think I've been running a deck that abuses this. Beastly has also been running a deck that he abuses this. You're probably going to see that maybe sometime in the future. I don't know if he's going to do tournament stuff with it, uploading it somewhere. We've kind of established this sort of gross little Magic Eater niche where you just basically power up this guy, send him in, and do some major. Although I don't think Beastly's done more with it. I think he switched over to Trapdoor Ninja stuff, but regardless, Eater I think is certainly a big card that you don't want to sleep on, because it's very easy in certain factions to just deal a bit of damage to him, especially pirates. I find that Dagger Storm or Mugging is a great way to inflict that self-harm to the Eater and then give it that absorb attack boost. So not surprising at all if this guy appears more in Ninja decks, especially since Ninja decks as well are taking a bit more prominence here. But be on the lookout for Eater. He hits hard when given the circumstances, and you don't want to be on the receiving end of a Magic Eater. Trust me, I've already been there. Quick detour now to talk about our boy Resurrection as the next sort of big change here. Resurrection got a bit of love here, going from a 5 gold to a 4-1, and with the Cemetery now being at a 3 gold and a burst spell, it's actually become much easier to pull off the fabled Resurrection Tombstone combo that can see big things hit the board very early, cheating out cracks just by turn 4 kind of early. It's very cool to see Resurrection getting some love here, and very curious to see where people are going to be using this, whether or not it actually makes it into some people's arsenals for just overall deck lists. It is fun. I've been able to cheat out some great things. Joneviev's, Crack's Eye. It's very cool. It's a very fun little deck here. And again, because of the changes that we saw in Cemetery and in Resurrection, it's a bit easier to pull off the combo than it was previously. I mean, Resurrection is still an incantation, unfortunately, so your opponent can respond to your spells by knocking off the Tombstone with maybe Burn, perhaps. Tombstones being neutral structures, they could be hit by something, I think, like Blaze, Yarm Lightning, Dagger Storm. Maybe not Dagger Storm, but just general damage spells that can hit Tombstones can be used effectively against Resurrection-focused decks. So maybe try to have it as the pure focus of your deck. If I recommend Resurrection as sort of the little tech in your yellow-black zombie lists, because then again, if the Resurrection falls flat, you're not out of the game yet. You can recover with things like Norabon, who actually we're going to talk about maybe now, actually. Because Norabon got some sweet help as well. But keep an eye on Resurrection decks. Much more possible now in this modern format. I say modern format. I don't know how long we're going to have it. But regardless, let's go ahead and check in on our old buddy Norabon here. Who, oh, by the way, borders are back. Look how lovely they are. Love to see them. But Norabon getting some serious help in this patch as well for zombies. Pretty much the same ability here with the 1 gold, you raise all zombies, but alongside that, you also get the arrival effect of performing this same ability here, which is pretty insane as a way to just set up your tombstones and then turn 7 drop Norabon. I know a lot of decks in the past, or at least a lot of Norabon focused decks, had the issue of, hey, I'm going to throw out my Norabon right now and hope and pray that it survives so I can pop the ability here, and to find out it doesn't do that. You know, opponent could have some burn, they could redirect the unit to pop off on Norabon, like, and they don't get their value out of Norabon with a bunch of dead tombstones. I think with this arrival ability, zombie decks become a bit more scarier because now you can set up the tombstones all you want, ensure that you make it to turn 7, and then Norabon comes out and you instantly get those zombies to use. You don't have to end up floating the gold. You don't have to wait till like turn 5 or turn 7 to, you know, Norabon and then pop. You get the instant pop for the 7-2 price and start marching around those zombies in sort of the same initiative here. So it's a very, very cool thing to see Norabon get, and maybe we'll give that a bit more, or give a bit more power, excuse me, to the zombie decks moving forward. Also, shouts out to my boy Squire, who got some updated art, looking fine. And the final sort of big card change I want to talk about, at least for this video, is the Iceweaver. Iceweaver was in a bit of a weird spot pre-patch. He was sort of a card that existed, but didn't really do much for ice-focused strategies. I mean, sure, he was a ranged unit with the mage. He could hit flyers, which was cool. He could freeze things for the 1 gold floating, which again could come in handy when you want something to die a little bit faster. The freeze weakening, if you will, and then being able to pop in with other units, which was fine. But now we've got a bit of a more interesting ability. For 1 mana and his attack, he deals 9 to 13 damage to enemies in an area of 5x5, alongside freezing said enemies that are caught up in the blast. So this also took me by surprise just initially, because I forgot this card didn't have a range specified on it. But essentially what Iceweaver will do is you'll walk him in to wherever he wants to pop his ability, and for the 1 mana and attack, you know, paying the activation, it'll just create a freeze bomb around the Iceweaver itself and freeze off everything in that 5x5 area. So that's something you have to be mindful of, because previously I thought this card would work like Pyromancer, in which we saw the 2 mana, you shoot a fire blast, it deals a big amount of damage to a certain range of cards, which we saw was certainly powerful. A lot of Warlock decks ran Pyro at least as a 2 of, just so that way they can have that big Pyro clear ability for their decks. Iceweaver, I think, I've heard people say that this is going to be a good change for Iceweaver. It makes Iceweaver more impactful, and I mean, I kind of get that, but when I used him, I didn't really feel that way, because with Iceweaver, you have to walk him into position in order to be able to get the maximum amount of efficiency out of that Ice Blast. Being just having to just walk him in can be pretty risky, alongside the freeze maybe not paying off the way you want it to. It kind of feels a little bit weird to me. Maybe it's just to play around with it a bit more, but I mean, I don't know how I feel about the having to make him a walking ice bomb rather than an actual mage that shoots an Ice Blast. I don't know. Even if it was just 1, I think that would be a bit more impactful than just the simple ice bomb explosion around him. But for the ability itself, I think it is pretty cool to now have sort of a, I guess, Ice Blast-esque effect. For those of you who remember back in C1, when we had Ice Blast, the spell what you dropped, it dealt that, you know, ice. It pretty much did the same thing. Deal damage, get some freeze, get that ice going. It's very reminiscent of that, and I'm very excited to see where it goes on Iceweaver specifically. Again, I think it's a bit more tricky to use him now, but if you're finding success, if you're doing well with him, more power to you. I don't think it's a bad ability at all. So, yeah, I think with that being said, though, that is the final change I wanted to cover for this video. So let's go ahead and wrap up with some final thoughts. All right, and with that being said, folks, that was, or at least some of the notes that I felt like were the most important to talk about for this. But overall, I didn't talk about a lot, folks. There are certainly a lot of things that have changed here. Grave Robbery, Arctic Explorer, Manfish, Living Vine, Southport Captain, and much, much more that I did not talk about, as well as some changes to classes and abilities, which I think are okay to not talk about in this video specifically, but still, again, important to put out there. Obviously, the full patch note list is, I think, on Discord as well as maybe Steam. I don't know if it's on Steam, but certainly on Discord if you want to read up on the entirety of what was changed and what is different. Mostly everything should be covered on that, so be sure to check that out. But overall, folks, let me know what you thought about this patch in general. It is sort of a massive change to the game that we knew, you know, just under a week ago, and certainly morphs things. I feel like now the game is in a bit more of a faster pace, in my opinion, but that's maybe because of what we're seeing with some of the decks being played nowadays. But yeah, it feels like a completely new atmosphere, a huge shakeup to what we previously known with levels, with combat, with the spell speeds. It's certainly changed, and whether or not you like it in this new form is entirely up to you. I think the goal is to just kind of bring more of the more eyes onto the product by just creating a easier to understand game. Whether or not this patch accomplishes that, not really sure, because I've already been entrenched for so long. It's been about a year now, maybe more than that. But overall, I think this is cool. I'm excited to see what people come up with and bring to the table. Of course, the Wednesday tournament now shaking up to be a bit different for sure, so excited to see what people bring to the table. But folks, that's going to do it for me for now. If you did enjoy the video, be sure to like the video, be sure to share with your friends, and subscribe if you're new to the channel or haven't done so already. This is way you could support us after all. And like I said, leave some comments down below what you guys are thinking about this recent patch. But with that being said, that's going to be it for me for now. So, until next time, guys, stay gaming.